Now, let's catch up with Professor Shahram Akbarzadeh. He is a research professor with the Alfred Deakin University in Australia, and he joins us from Hobart in Tasmania. Professor Shahram, thank you for your time today. From Iran's point of view, what would you say proportionate might mean? As they mourned General Soleimani's death all this week already, the authorities there made the point that the target of their revenge is the U.S. president, not all the American people.
Well, this is quite a dramatic escalation of the conflict. Iran is risking a lot by hitting Iraqi bases that house U.S. troops, because this is exactly playing into Trump's hand. Trump would really love to start a major confrontation with Iran and effectively implement regime change in Iran. So what Iran is doing is quite risky, given that the Iranian authorities know full well Iranian armed forces are no match for U.S. firepower.
So, Professor, does this set the stage for a growing possibility of U.S. military intervention within Iran, and are we near that stage?
Well, we are definitely going in that direction. That seems to be the trajectory. There have been lots of talk in Washington about how Iran has to change its ways, hinting at regime change. There was explicit talk of regime change in Washington a few years back. So, with the way Iran is responding, it is inviting a military retaliation from the United States and really preparing the ground for some kind of regime change. Whether that would mean sending American troops to Iran, boots on the ground, it's a different story. But we're definitely moving in that direction.
Professor, there have been U.S. sanctions in place and reportedly biting hard on ordinary Iranians already. How far and for how long would you say Iran might be able to sustain and exact their revenge?
But economic sanctions have been quite severe, and it has really hit hard the ordinary population in Iran. We have seen rioting in Iran, food rioting, responding to price rises because the state in Iran can no longer subsidize, as it used to, many goods for the population. So there's a lot of upset and angst in Iran, but that doesn't mean that the regime is weak. It doesn't mean that the regime is going to collapse tomorrow. It can continue because it does have quite a strong and wide support base within the country. For all the opposition and dissent in the country, there is also a large segment of the population that has a vested interest in maintaining the regime in power. So the regime is not going to fall tomorrow.
Now, Professor, we cannot discount what's happening in Iraq as well. The situation there with their government. Are there quarters in Iraq that may, in fact, be working quietly on their own to exact their own revenge and scupper whatever diplomatic efforts may be underway?
Of course, the Iraqi Shia, the Popular Mobilization Units, they lost their second in command in the same attack by the U.S. on Qasem Soleimani. So they have their own grievances against the United States. And in fact, there were Katyusha attacks on the U.S. Embassy immediately after the assassination of Qasemi and Mohandes. So there is a wide movement within Iraq about, focusing on removing and expelling U.S. troops from Iraq. So there is pressure in that space too. But it's a really complicated situation because on the one hand, Iraq doesn't want to be caught between Iran and the United States. But on the other hand, they want to also exact revenge on the United States for what the U.S. has done.
So, Professor, do these latest events mark the start of the war in the Middle East, or did it happen already with the assassination of Qasem Soleimani?
It is certainly pointing to that direction. I would have thought that it was quite reckless for the United States to kill a serving commander of a country's armed forces. That was reckless, and they would have known that there would be retaliation. And I was hoping that the Iranians would not retaliate, but they have now. So I don't think anyone is learning from lessons of history. And everyone is just reacting, knee-jerk reaction, which is really terrible for the region.
Professor, one unfortunate outcome of this may have been, as we saw from the three-day funeral ceremony for the general, a uniting of, up to this point, individual groups with their own grievances against the U.S. and the U.S. president. Is this bearing out in the region? As you said, it is very complicated there, and there are many, many groups and their proxies.
Yes, there are many groups, many different interests, competing interests. Within Iran, you know, we have a hardliner faction and a so-called reformist faction. And even though Soleimani was celebrated by the hardliners as a national hero for pushing ISIS back and defeating ISIS and protecting Iran from the ISIS attack, there were people in Iran who were critical of Soleimani and Iran's policies of expanding its reach to the region. Now, with the killing of Soleimani, those differences seem to have been pushed to the side, and everyone is joined together in some kind of a national unity sense of disgust at what the U.S. has done. The same kind of dynamic may be observed in other Arab countries. Many Arab countries where many Arab populations are critical and doubtful about what Iran is doing in the region, expanding its reach, but they're also shocked that the United States can come in and kill a serving member of an armed force, of a sovereign country, a sovereign state.
Professor Shahram Akbarzadeh of Deakin University, many thanks for your time and your analysis today.